Welcome to the Adventure Story Podcast. First, let me take 20 seconds to tell you about my new book. What if we've been looking for Atlantis in the wrong place? When an archaeologist dies protecting an impossible secret, her final message sends Eden Black racing into the Sahara to find an ancient crystal encoded with the knowledge of a lost civilization. It's the power that once turned a paradise into a wasteland. From high-speed chases through Marrakesh to an underground chamber older than recorded history, Eden must face a rogue scientist determined to use the crystal to reshape the world. Last time it awakened, the Sahara was born. This time, it could end everything. The Sahara event is the 7th in my Eden Black archaeological thriller series. Search for the Sahara event by me, Luke Richardson, wherever you get your adventures. Right, let's get on with the episode. Lost Roman treasure buried beneath Iceland's volcanic surface. It sounds like the stuff of legend, but what if history holds more secrets than we ever imagined? For centuries, scholars have debated just how far the Roman Empire reached. Could they have made it to the far north, leaving behind riches and relics waiting to be uncovered? Hey, I'm Luke. I'm an author of archaeological adventure novels. I travel the world looking for stories to put into my books and share with you right here on the Adventure Story Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Dave Bartel, an author who breathes thriller into archaeology. With a background in technology, Dave applies his what-if mindset to crafting pulse-pounding adventure stories that feel as plausible as they are exciting. Dave, thanks for joining me.
Oh, it's great to be here, Luke. Thanks for inviting me.
So let's get straight into this. The idea of the Romans reaching as far as Iceland is a fascinating historical what-if. Though, is there any real evidence that suggests this could have happened, that they could have got that far north?
Iceland, no. But the Romans, Roman artifacts have been found in Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, probably from trade via Germania. But I like to think that Rome had explorers like any other culture. I mean, you can imagine you've got your armies and doing whatever you do with trade, but you're going to have folks who go out beyond the boundaries of the empire. They're going to find out what's there, what's going on. Romans, they mined everywhere they consumed. So it's possible.
It's a fascinating what if, as I say. And I suppose you're right with that, aren't you? Because actually, to leave an archaeological trace of something is quite a big thing. You know, for you and I, we could travel all over the world, and in a few hundred years, there'll be no record that we were ever there.
It's fascinating because if you look at modern archaeology now, that's gotten to be much more technical. You are looking at sifting through going back 30,000 years where humans lived and painted, but how do they live? So you're sifting through grains of dirt to find pollens and foodstuffs and all of this, and then trying to create a picture. So we leave a footprint somewhere, but we may not leave something recognizable like a Roman coin that people can say, "Oh, wow, look at this."
So as I say, it's a what if, but the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, I suppose, is the point.
Right, and then that's it's one of the great stories. I mean, we all know the ancient histories, and we know the ancient cultures and the Tigris and Euphrates River and all the Indus Valley and China and so forth and so on. But then you get back farther than that. You go into tens of thousands. You get to now Göbekli Tepe, and everybody's wondering, well, what is that exactly? But if you go back farther than that, we've got cave paintings, and you start to figure out people were living and doing things, but we don't really know much about it.
Yeah, I know. It's fascinating stuff. So let's talk about one of the premises behind your book, which is an ancient scroll that was found underneath Mount Vesuvius. Was this inspired by a real-life discovery or something you read or something, some idea that popped into your mind?
Kind of both. So if we look at our fascination with Vesuvius, so it erupts in 79 AD, buries Pompeii and nearby Herculaneum, which is less famous. These were lost to time until about like 1709 or something, when the first discoverer, dug a hole and found something. And then over the next couple hundred years, people went crazy digging up things. And even today, there's more and more revealed there. This was think of it, Herculaneum was a villa for Romans. The wealthy Romans went there. You get out of Rome in the summertime, it's hot, smelly, and all that. And these wealthy people had giant libraries. It's a wealthy people as like part of showing my wealth is I'm going to show you, here's all my books and here's all my scrolls. And so the scrolls are there. They found them, but these things have been charcoaled by the pyroclastic surge from Vesuvius. And there's been a work going on to figure out how do you unroll these things? Because if you take them apart, they brittle. So fascinating thing is, just last year, the first prize was handed out for someone to do a 3D scan of the scroll, and then when you write on ink on papyrus, that ink is a charcoal based, and it actually. So if you think about it, like there's burnt paper, and then you have ink on top. So now you have to figure out, well, what's that raised ink surface and decompress it. So that's been figured out. So now maybe we're deciphering these scrolls. I looked at it as suppose somebody who had saved a bunch of these scrolls in something fireproof. And so there's the beginning of my story. They didn't know much about volcanology. They had ideas, but the prologue in my book goes to some guys who said they're studying the volcanoes. They discover lava tubes. They're trying to figure this out, and they saved some of their evidence.
Love that. Yeah, that's fantastic. And I'd heard about that story of a couple of years ago where they, someone, was it, they used some technology to scan inside or to put the pieces together or something, didn't they?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I've been following this for years because I just amateur scientist, and I actually put this premise in my book where there's a character who at one of the universities in the modern day phase of the book, who is you know, basically scanning, kind of doing slices of the scroll, almost like a CT scan your body, and then you come up with these slices of what's there, and then you have to basically assemble this data and unroll it and transcribe anything that looks like text. And so as AI has come in and you've got better and better computer capacity, it's actually become a reality. So I was cracking up when I first saw this prize handed out last year. It's like, oh, there's this thing I put in my book that's become a reality now. It's the old, you know, fiction is stranger than truth, the reverse of, what we normally go by.
That's so funny, isn't it? That's happened to me a couple of times. I've written a book and then something's happened, and I thought I'm sure I wrote about this. Oh, in my book, The Atlantis Agenda, I said there was a city beneath the Amazon, and then about 6 months later, some scans revealed that in the place where I'd said it was, this city was there. So you've got to be careful with us writers because we might put a hex on your house if you upset us.
Well, but that's a fascinating thing about what you and I do is we look at the land as the way it is, and there it is, and it's going always been this way. But if you peel it back and go back 2,000 years, the soil has been built up. There's something that's there underneath all of those trees. I mean, think about it. We forests are hundreds of years old, but if we go back to the Roman Empire, it's 2,000 plus years old. So forests have come and gone during that time, and so you could have entire things consumed by that little mound over there isn't a mound. It's a burial.
Yeah, that's right. And if you talk about the way sort of the land builds up and the hills change and the seas and the oceans and the lakes come and go, the sort of layout of the land can be very different, can't it? 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago.
Right. And our characters are, my character's a trained archaeologist, but he's his mission is really to prevent looting of sites. He'll be able to look at a landscape and say, it's something different here. There's like those stones didn't arrange themselves by themselves. What went on?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm fascinated to hear about that. So in your book, it sort of it doesn't open, but it leads towards the discovery of a cache of diamonds being discovered. Were the Romans known to have traded or to have coveted diamonds in this way? Is that something that's likely to be found in association with a Roman site?
Generally not. So Romans didn't value diamonds. They were more of a curious thing. They're here and there. They existed. The Indian cultures more so, and that's really where it kind of started. So it's the diamonds became a curious artifact. So that was when the modern day discovery, where a cache of diamonds in a Roman vase and a journal were found. And so there's the conundrum. It's like, I got the Roman part. I see diamonds are valuable, but I don't get the Roman plus the diamonds. Where did this come from? Why did they bring them here? And and of course, into our modern day senses, how many more could there be? So that's where kind of you're running the story. And so I don't want to give any spoiler alerts, but the story deals with lava tubes. And if you look at how do diamonds form, they form deep in the earth. They get forced up through the volcano shafts, and that's essentially what the diamond mines are doing. Is you're just digging down these shafts and pulling the diamonds out.
I see. So you're putting you're sort of combining the idea of the lava tubes, which would allow the Romans or anyone on the surface to have access beneath the ground without having to dig the soil out themselves and the rock out of themselves. And when accessing these tubes, these underground network of tunnels, they found the diamonds in that way.
Right, and that's because if you look at how are diamonds mined today, you go down to South Africa and there's certain structures and you find them, and there's these massive operations to dig these huge holes, and you get the whole blood diamond idea. Uh, are diamonds inherently valuable? Yes, in an industrial sense, they're also inherently valuable in a beautiful sense. But my wife and I were cracking up the other day. We came across an article in The Economist where synthetic diamonds now have gotten big enough and cheap enough that the people like De Beers are kind of running scared. It's like, when you can buy a 3 5 carat rock on your finger for hundreds of dollars instead of tens of thousands, that changes how things something's valuable.
Yes, exactly. We when I bought my wife's engagement ring, we bought a lab grown diamond, and I'm not an expert, but it was a decision because we knew the provenance of it. We knew that it wouldn't come through it didn't have a dark past, which I wasn't quite so sure about. Some of the traditionally mined diamonds.
Yeah, it's a whole, well, I'll leave that alone. It's like one of those things of, I think it's so the point is really there for you and me is we look at the dark past of diamonds today. We look at Romans didn't not really valuing diamonds back in their day. And so, you know, is something inherently valuable? Gold has been over across all, tens of thousands of years, still is. Diamonds come and go.
Yeah, that's true. I suppose it's the scarcity, right? The natural scarcity of something that makes it valuable.
Right. It's exactly that.
So we talked about Mount Vesuvius and the story there that partly inspired this story. Were there any other? I mean, you've combined a lot of history and a lot of different parts of history in this book, which is why I love it. Were there any other historical or archaeological discoveries that inspired the mystery or the adventure of this story?
It's kind of a confluence of things. Like, folks have asked me as I go back to where I conceived the idea and where did it come from. And the whole idea was inspired by when I was looking to write my first novel. I had stumbled across a story in the BBC titled "Roman Coins Found in Jersey." My first thought is like, Roman coins in New Jersey, the U.S. state, and my brain kind of translated. Wait a minute, this is BBC, so it's Jersey, England. And I started looking around, and it's like there are detectorists and others in England are out there all the time finding caches of coins and other Roman stuff because the Romans were all over Britannia. But it got to me thinking, like, what if? What if the Romans, and I started thinking, could they have reached North America? Well, the Romans weren't great sailors. I mean, they certainly sailed around, but they didn't go long distances. Then I started thinking back and forth about, what if there was a way that Romans could move around underground? And somewhere along there, I discovered lava tubes. And if you click around, you'll find these things. The biggest are the Thurston lava tubes in the Big Island of Hawaii, the Andara tubes in Australia, and there's lots of smaller ones all over. So it's plausible you could have longer sets of tubes. The fascinating thing is it's even plausible that they're on the moon. So they're suspecting that they say if they're on Earth, they're on Mars, they're on the lunar surface, which were volcanically active. And there's even a theory developing. It's like we could land on the moon. It's like, wait, we could use these lava tubes underground, seal them off with air, and that way we've now built habitats for a lot less money than above surface.
I had never heard of those before we first spoke, and this idea that in fact behind where each of us are sitting now, there could be this network of tunnels that have been undiscovered because you don't know how deep they could go. That if you hadn't looked for them or that area hadn't been excavated for any other reason, you just wouldn't know, would you?
No, you wouldn't. I started, yes, part of my story, early part of the story takes place in London, where they're Britannica and the early Roman Londinium. And you start thinking, well, could the Romans have been underground there? And you realize once you start probing around London and say, hey, what's underground? There's beside the tube, there's just massive infrastructures that are down there that have been dug over time. And so just fascinating. We never think about, what's below.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that. So let's talk about Iceland, which is where part of this story sets. It makes it a really unique setting for an archaeological thriller, first of all. I don't know, I've heard another archaeological thriller set in Iceland, but also for a Roman treasure hunt. Now, how did you connect the two? I know we've talked about already that there was no specific evidence that the Romans went there, although there could have been. How did you pull that, or why did you pull those two together?
It's just this sort of flowing the story ideas. And I started looking at if, assuming you found this lava tube network that runs around under Europe. So that's what my protagonist is trying to do. They've theorized this, but they've never been able to prove it. They have these old Roman scrolls that says they're there, like, but where's the front door? So they're looking around, and the Romans were all over Britannia, all the way up to Scotland, or then known as Caledonia, and you've got Hadrian's Wall. Well, if you've got explorers going beyond, you know, where would you go if you were in some network of tunnels looking around? And there are other places. Iceland, if you look at it, it's called the land of ice and fire. There's constant eruptions. So if you look at the news, there's this fascinating, it's like eruption. Everybody gathers around, takes pictures of it now. It's the connection would be to a remote place for Rome. So Germania, Gaul, Britannia were well-known parts of the empire, but beyond Caledonia, that's Scotland, that's an unknown place. So what could you go there? Someplace really interesting and remote that if a discovery was made, it would cause big question marks. What was going on? Why did they get here? And so they didn't leave any real footprint. They were just there visiting, so to speak, but they left the evidence. And so that's what my protagonist stumbles across. And it's just a fascinating place to have a story. I mean, it's both physically, geologically, and culturally interesting because nobody really lived there until about the 800s. Yeah, and it's just kind of it's back. I think when I wrote the book in 2018 or before, Iceland was also having its cultural moment. It's like Reykjavik was the travel destination. Everybody wanted to go. It's
That is fascinating. Yeah, and I love that how through stories like ours you can spotlight a place, can't you? You can shed light on that place and what it offers, both as a historical place, but also as a fun place to have your actual adventures, to have your holidays, to go and experience for yourself.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, writing, your chase around London or Paris or some other big city, it's fun. And for the people who visited, it's like it's a little bit of a trip down memory lane, like, oh yeah, I've been at that street and I've seen that thing. But if you're, going to a new place, somewhere you haven't been, and that's what I try to do in my books is have a sense of there's the action that moves you around, but it's the travel. You're hitting different cities, and so you have that sense of maybe call it that James Bondy type of thing where you're hitting the big cities and doing things. And there's always food associated with it. Not tons, but usually one spot they're having a good meal, and what you have a chance of you're in. I remember one in near Alexandria when I was writing a story there. They're having breakfast. Well, you're having your basic American breakfast where you've got waffles and such. You're having flatbread and yogurts and other things. And so in the sense of what it smells like, and you give a different place.
Yes, love that. When my wife and I were in Egypt, we absolutely adored the breakfast. They had this sort of fava bean sauce, which they'd serve every day with a sort of tahini paste. It was amazing.
Yeah. I forget the name, but I wrote about it as that way. It's like my character is like the only thing he lamented at the breakfast was like, well, he loved bacon and just it wasn't going to happen there.
Yeah, you won't find that, or eggs, or pancakes, but something like this, and it's yeah, absolutely beautiful. I like that. I like that. Did you come across any, not mentioning the ones we've talked about already, did you come across any other surprising historical facts or real world mysteries when writing this book that you just had to put in, or that perhaps form the basis of one of your next writing projects?
This one there was the history is pretty much as I covered it, but as you start digging in, so it's like it is with writing is like to write 1,000 words, you need to like research 10,000 words. Like it's just a huge amount of like what's going on with Rome. It's like if you get a fact wrong, your readers are very fast to let you know. So this book was happening at the time in the early part of the book when they call my prologue, Nero was alive, and the guy who wrote the scrolls was actually a friend of Nero's, and so Nero would be the one who was funding and driving the initial research, and so it's the learning about Rome and then learning about those next bits where I started to just touch on things in the ancient world. And so moving to my second book, the next thing I started thinking of was the Alexandrian Library and the Alexandrian Scrolls. And so it just, as you're in the whole Roman Empire, it ends with the Ptolemies in right around the year zero, but the Alexandrian Library carried on. So just, like one thing led to another. It's like ideas spin off, and I've got them all over the place. Like which one could become an adventure people would care about. Yeah, history itself is kind of dull. What I like to do is to tie it to, anchor it in an event, Vesuvius eruption, anchor it with a person. Nero lived in a certain time, but you don't know what Nero had for lunch. You don't know what he did. You don't know what his relationship. So if you could paint in some of that in your story, you're bringing a known character to life in a way that's fun. It supports a story. To me, I find that fascinating. It's like if you think about that, we get a discovery, but how did they go about it?
Yes, yes, I do. I do know exactly what you mean, and you add that secret sauce. You add that special something to it that stops it being history and makes it a story that we can sort of get behind.
And that's what really matters. If you think about it, it's his story. It's not a. If I think back to high school, I had this history teacher who he never wrote on a blackboard, and he'd just sit on the edge of his desk and he'd tell us stories. Now I didn't remember. I mean, it could have been half made up stuff, but the way he brought forth what went on in the ancient world, what went on around World War II, what we were always interested in the way he delivered what happened in the past. He delivered it as a story, not a list of facts, which you had to regurgitate on paper somewhere. That's just dull.
So, if you could lead an expedition yourself to personally uncover one of these real life treasures, maybe one you've featured in one of your books, or something completely new, what would it be, and where would you go, and why would you choose that one?
And I've thought about this. It's like, it's like my trajectory, where my book's going, what's the next big thing to find? Because the hard thing is like, you find this massive thing and you save the world. It's like, well, how many times can you do that? And who really cares? Um, so I would go back to something we know, I'll call it less of in our Western world, and looking at the lost libraries of Timbuktu. So if we think about this is going back to Sankara University in that part of Africa. And in the 13th to the 17th centuries, this was the intellectual hub of the world. When most all of Europe was mired in medieval thinking and trying to, just kind of trudging along, this was where you've got great thinkers from Persia, Egypt, Spain, Morocco, who join up with the Malayan, Berber, Arab scholars to blend this stuff. So you got a fusion of African, Arabic, and Greek ideas all in one place, creating this vast library. This is also a time when alchemy, the precursor to modern chemistry, emerged. So, the question is like, what could be in that? We all know the Lost Library of Alexandria as a thing, but here's this other one in this massive continent, Africa, that we don't think about as much. Well, we do in the modern world, but we think about it as more a place where trouble's going on, not a place where amazing cultures were and still are. So that's where how do we go in and find that? Where could it be? Some of it's been protected. Some of it's been protected from modern disruptions that have been going on. But it's that. What ancient knowledge is lost? Most everything ever written is gone. Some of it might still be there.
That's fascinating. I've never heard of that. That's a legend that's totally new to me. So I'll be with you on that adventure if you don't mind.
I know. I just started talking about this yesterday. My wife says, "Oh, you so got to write that."
Looking back then, what adventure stories, whether they were books, movies, legends, histories, first sparked your imagination and made you want to write your own?
It's hard to say which one it is. I read a ton as a kid, going back to some Lloyd Alexander books in my early childhood, and then of course the master of story, Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. Um, as I got older, I read climbing adventures, like Climbing K2 or The Eiger Sanction, which is fiction. But the adventure there was literally on the edge, meaning if you made a mistake, it was fatal. Um, but if I think about writing, what really tipped me to the mystery would be in my after college. I had a degree in biochemistry, which means all science and no reading. After school reading, came across Steve Barry's books, and he wrote an early one, The Templar's Legacy, and also Amber Room. And to me, that really sparked my interest of getting into these, like something that was old and uh, a mystery that was there. And I still remember his final scene. I don't want spoiler alerts for the Templar Legacy, where you've actually found the place and you're going in there. And as he's built the emotion to where you discover, you go down behind, you're moving to, it's like there's that sense of like it's here, it's here, it's here. And that's where really what I want to do is deliver that kind of experience.
Yeah, I love that, and I get that completely. That resonates with my own want to be a writer, to deliver that feeling of awe and that feeling of sort of amazement and that and fascination with the outside world and our history and our culture and all the things that come with that.
Right. And then there's the next thing that you and I do, which is like as soon as you're there, it's like there's the treasure and you reach out to put your hands on it, and all of a sudden somebody behind you hear the click of a rifle that says, "Step back, it's mine."
Yes, yes. I mean, that's the bit we don't live ourselves. That's the bit we that is fiction, but you can imagine it, can't you? For sure.
Right, right.
Dave, that's fantastic. That's so interesting. Where can people find you and your books, particularly Roman Ice, which is the one we've referenced in our conversation today, online?
Perfect. Well, at this point in my career, everything is at Amazon. So you can find it on Amazon Kindle, paperback. You can also, if you're a Kindle Unlimited reader, you've got it there. You want to find out more about me, go to davebartel.com. And when you're there, you can also grab a free novella. And I just released a new one, Alexander's Gold. So, the old sense of, do you want to sample the chocolates before buying a box? Go ahead and grab one.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Luke.
Now I've totally got another lost library to write about. Absolutely love conversations like this because it does just inspire me with so many more legends, so many more myths and little nuggets of history to go off on. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Adventure Story Podcast. It's so good to hang out. It's so good to spend time with you. If you've enjoyed the show today, please subscribe, like and share. It'll take you just seconds, but really helps me spread the word about the show and what we're trying to do here. If you've got a story you'd like me to explore, let me know in the comments or hello@lucerichardsonauthor.com. That's my email address, hello@lucerichardsonauthor.com. And if you need some more adventure in your life, and let's be honest, who doesn't, you might like to join the Adventure Society. This weekly newsletter is your ticket to travel with me to share real-world adventures and find out when a new story or a new season of this podcast drops. LukeRichardsonAuthor.com/The Adventure Society. LukeRichardsonAuthor.com/The Adventure Society is where you need to go. And a special thanks to my patrons who make creating in different ways possible. All my books and podcasts are dedicated to you. You keep me motivated when times get tough and focused when something else threatens to steal my attention, which happens quite a lot. Many of you have been supporting me since the very early days, and for that I'm incredibly grateful. If you'd like to support me and my various creations, consider joining that crew on Patreon. You'll get free early access to my books, commercial-free direct downloads of this podcast and more fun stuff as I invent it. LukeRichardsonAuthor.com/Patreon, Patreon. And of course, if you're a big fan of adventure stories like the one we've been discussing today, check out my books, LukeRichardsonAuthor.com. Thank you so much, bon voyage, enjoy the adventure, and I'll see you next time.